So, we've talked a little bit about what political parties are, groups of people with common ideology who come together and organize to try to um, to identify candidates and get them elected in order to govern in the ways that they think the country ought to be governed. But what does that mean exactly? What do the political parties exactly do? So, one thing that's interesting about political parties is that they are bottom up organizations. They are like our federal system. You can see they have all of these different levels. You have a national level, a state level, a county level, a precinct level. You have all of these different levels that mirror the federal system. And like the federal system, these parties provide a lot of different access points for people to get involved in politics. If you want to get more politically engaged, I don't know if it's too late now, but one thing we certainly need this election is more poll workers. And that is something that happens at that precinct level. People from both parties to help be there on election day to make sure that everything's on the up and up and that everybody is registered to vote and make sure everything runs smoothly. Traditionally, those jobs have been done, they're done by volunteers, but traditionally the volunteers tend to be retired folks. Well, with COVID, a lot of those retired folks are older and do not want to expose themselves to lots of strangers by being there. So at a very important election, very polarized election, we've also got a shortage of poll workers. So I don't know if it's too late, but if you're interested, contact your local precinct political party and see if they're looking for people. Might be a way to get involved. But there's lots of roles for individuals to volunteer, to get involved. There are also paid positions, and they tend to be very bottom up structures. So rather than the power coming from the top, it tends to be more of a grassroots. The local, most of the activity is going on at the local level, and then some people from the local level then represent the locality at the next level up and up and up. So it's a bottom up rather than a top down. And grassroots organizing is a lot of what the political parties do. So, and that's why they tend to be very bottom heavy organizations. There's people who are out there trying to get people registered to vote, making contact with potential voters. In a normal year, you'd have a lot of volunteers going door to door, knocking on doors and asking people if they plan to vote and trying to give more information about whichever candidate you are supporting. So they provide a structure for citizens to get involved, to volunteer, to whether that is in person, whether you're going to be somebody who's out there knocking on doors, or even driving people to the polls that maybe lack transportation, to people who want to make campaign contributions. That's part of what the parties do. A lot of what the parties do is fundraising, work the day-to-day operations, and of course, find candidates, train candidates, and help people who are interested in actually running for elected office to gain the skills that they need and the support that they need to do so. So it's an organization for getting people elected. They also foster cooperation between the different interest groups that, again, parties are several different interest groups that the party helps to keep them coordinated so that their interests stay aligned. Figure out the places of overlap and develop policy that the different people can come together around. And that's sometimes very difficult, especially the broader the appeal of your party, the more special interests you've got. They don't always necessarily align. The things that African American people want do not necessarily align with the things that Latinx people want, or that LGBTQ people want, or that women want, or working class people want, or whatever, and finding those commonalities and building support around those is a lot of what the political parties do, and trying to make sure that the disagreements don't bubble up. For example, I mentioned before that Latinx voters tended to support Democrats, but one place that very notably did not happen. I was living in California when the California has a proposition system where voters can get laws directly on the ballot, bypass the legislature and go directly to the people. And there was a proposition that would have legalized gay marriage. People were very surprised because the Latinx communities voted very heavily against it, because they tend to be Catholic and therefore very socially conservative. So the all levels don't always align, but so keeping the focus on the commonalities and fostering cooperation, building those coalitions is a big part of what the political parties are trying to do in any case. And if you're talking about what political parties do, you have to look at the three faces of political parties. And I love this image, I guess, because I'm hungry and dessert sounds wonderful. So 3 different kinds of pie in one shell sounds really good to me. So the first slice of pie, it's called the party in the electorate. That is everybody out in the country that identifies themselves as either a member of or tending to support a particular party. Usually when you're counting the person, if you're wanting to report on the percentage in this precinct that are registered Republicans or registered Democrats, you go by party registration. So that's how they're typically measured. But they also include anybody who isn't registered, but just tends to support that party on a fairly consistent basis. So sometimes it'll be that broader number. So those people who do identify with a political party are called party identifiers. Somebody who identifies with a political party. Independents are people who don't identify with a political party, and so often it's used as a synonym for unaffiliated voters, somebody who's not registered with a party. But increasingly, that is also those who are saying neither party represents me. So not refusing to declare a tendency to support one or the other, but saying I don't, I take it candidate by candidate. Party organization includes committees, headquarters, conventions, leadership, staff, and a whole lot of volunteers. Theoretically, this looks like a pyramid. So this, you've got the broad base where most things happen, and then members of each precinct and ward go up to the municipal committees, to the county, to the state, to the national. But really, it's less a pyramid and more a spider web. National committees exist sort of as their own entity. Local committees, most of the power and most of the activity is going on at that local level in the local committees, and the state committees are there kind of as the coordinating between the two. So it's more multifaceted than just that pyramid. So the national party committees, those often you'll hear about the Democratic National Committee or the Republican National Committee, or sometimes they're called the DNC and the RNC. Those are the national party committees. Those are the organizations that are charged with overseeing the nationwide activities of the party. So But again, they're not dictating to the local committees. They're also, it's much more nuanced and feedback than that. They are, though, in charge of conducting the national conventions that happen every 4 years. And it used to be, before we had so much news from so many places, it used to be that it was at the conventions, that the delegates at the convention, well, I guess technically they still do. The delegates at the convention are the ones who choose the nominee. But now, with the extensive coverage of primary season, we know what the delegates are going to say before that happens. So it's really just the official announcement. They officially have the delegate vote, and they officially announce the candidate at those conventions. And then the National Committee is overseeing the party between conventions. Their major task is fundraising, so that they have what's called a war chest of money to help candidates in local and state as well as national elections. So the National Committee those are the ones that are talking to the really big donors and organizing that convention every 4 years. They're also the ones that often will get interviewed or quoted or looked at as far as the direction of what's the party thinking. But that is just because it's easier to, if you have one central organization, that's who it's easy to go to for a quote. State parties, both political parties, both the Democrats and the Republicans, have parties in each state that really, effectively are the party in that state. The state committees act as intermediaries between the national and the county committees. And typically, they are made up of a few members from each of the county committees, each of the geographical subdivisions. The county and local parties is where most of the work actually happens. That's where you're going to have your volunteers out on the street. These are the folks who are running the precinct offices, that are knocking on doors, handing out flyers, distributing those yard signs, registering, trying to get out the vote, and actually running the elections. The county committees also help recruit candidates for office. They are also involved in fundraising and a lot of the activity about trying to get people out to the polls. So we have the party in the electorate, that's who identifies themselves with the party organization, and then you have the party in government. That's the elected leaders who identify with the party. So that's the people who are in Congress or the presidency or the city council or the state legislature or wherever that say, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a socialist, but mostly they say Democrat or Republican. So the party in government significantly influences feedback to the party organization. So both the party in government and the party in the electorate are feeding back to the organization. The organization needs to know. They need to know, what does the electorate want, and they need to know what are the candidates willing to support, because that is who's going to be a good candidate for you. They need to support your ideas, but also you need, knowing what they need to do for their constituencies. You need to, it's all complex negotiating and trying to keep the coalition together. If the party in government is called the majority party, then they are leading the way in whichever government they are. So if they're in the majority in the House of Representatives, then they're trying to get their agenda passed. But even if they are not in the majority, even the party that is in the minority has a significant and important role to play. It's called the loyal opposition. I'm opposed to your policies, but I'm loyal to the country and the government. So even in the minority, they have the role of offering the other side of the argument, of saying why we think your policy is a bad idea, and why we think it needs to be changed in this or that way, what we think you've overlooked, and providing that's also part of continually campaigning, offering the alternative point of view. So where and being maybe being willing to compromise or maybe being unwilling to compromise, but showing that there's the problems with what the party in power is trying to do and why next election you should elect us.